What have you learned this year?
This year, more than any, the rate of change in the media industry that we're going through is probably more rapid. Things like ad exchanges, rise of mobility, it's all about social. So it just feels like the change is more rapid than it ever has been.
On a personal level, I've learnt that if I'm a balanced individual, then I'm going to deliver better results myself. And it's not all about putting in the 18-hour days. It's putting in quality time to make sure that you get quality results.
If you invest in good talent, it pays return, and it certainly has for our group. And frankly, clients are willing to pay for it, for good talent, if you've got it.
Group shopping this year, I mean, a category that didn't exist 2 years ago now has 400 or 500 replicas of Groupon. Groupon, a company that's now worth $6 billion. I think it just indicates how that reshuffling and reordering of global brands and the hierarchy of them is still very much in flux.
Okay, well, I think at this point I'll cross over to our social media monitoring team, starting off with Robin. Robin, anything, want to throw a question into the mix?
What do you see in your respective sectors as the biggest enemy, and how do you intend to fight it?
I think the biggest enemy in our space is talent, the lack of experienced talent. And so then what happens is that you push people into positions and jobs ahead of their time, and it ends up ending badly for the business and for the person.
I think that our biggest enemy at the moment is procurement, in as much as they're so price-driven, and they tend to forget about how strategy is more important in the end, because if you don't get that right, you'll fuck it up anyway.
The enemy, from my point of view, is an over-reliance on research to make decisions. I think that there are way too many people in marketing organisations today that are using research as a crutch, as a pass-fail to determine whether something should work or not, in absence of using their experience and instinct to make decisions for them.
I'd like to ask you two things. What makes a good agency, and what makes a good client?
Agencies who are absolutely prepared to get to know your category and get to know your business and actually feel that they are part of your organisation and have as much at risk in the success or failure of what they do as you do. And I guess that then turns the question on its head, because it actually requires the client to actually feel that of their agency partner. And I'm certainly of the school that they're not suppliers. They're not people that we just pick up the phone and say, do this, do that. It's very much about solving our business problems.
A good client is someone that will take joint risks. So when the agency comes in and really wants you to take a leap, that you take the leap together, because there will be failures and you need to take the failure together, not blame each other.
A good client is very clear on the type of agency that they're looking for. They're not out there putting together a list and they say, well, we'll have one that's big and one that's small and one that's multinational and one that's domestic, and therefore we've got all our bases covered with the pitch. They should be asking agencies that are very, very similar to pitch, because they've already determined the kind of agency that they need. I think beyond that, it's about being fair and reasonable around the circumstances that you ask your agency to deliver. By all means be demanding, but let's also be realistic.
We'll take another question from the room.
What is the most single important metric by which you judge business success and personal success?
We need to be doing well on a number of fronts. But if I was forced to pick one thing, then it's absolutely the work.
I try not to have 3 days in a row driving to work where I don't love what I do.
You get the people and the product right, the profit comes automatically. I don't worry about the financials, although WPP do, of course. But I know that if I've got those two elements right up front, the third one just comes along with it.
There's no doubt about it in my mind that the most important thing from a business point of view is driving customer satisfaction. And simply the same thing applied when I was in the banking world. From a personal perspective, and it's somewhat professionally related, is I want to make sure that I leave the business that I lead in better shape than when I was given it.
So fast forward 10 years, what's the biggest change we'll see? Joe, I think you've had the opportunity of being over in the US and doing a bit of future gazing recently, so I think perhaps we'll throw that one to you.
I think the single biggest change, it'll be in the digital space, and I think it will be more sight, sound and motion and entertainment delivered in a less linear way. So that whole concept of I broadcast something and then I associate myself or my brand and I insert it into whatever piece of content, I think won't be as important in 10 years' time.
If you went back 10 years, there's no way in the world you could have predicted what we're experiencing now in terms of technology. To forecast what's going to happen in 10 years' time is very difficult. But I think one thing that will definitely be the case, it will be addressable media. And by that I mean that you'll be talking to consumers that are interested only in your product.
The single most important thing for an agency, apart from client satisfaction, of course, is the ideas that they create. And that should be able to transcend any change in the media landscape or in the change in relation to media consumption.
I'm not in any position to predict what's going to happen in 10 years' time, but just excited by the fact that things continue to change at the rate that they do. And when you think that, in the banking sector as an example, that in the next not too far away, that your mobile phone is going to be, the device that you use as your transaction device, instead of carrying credit cards or cash around. Those things I think are incredibly exciting, and the way we live our lives is going to change.
When does personal become professional in social media, Mark?
I don't think there's any line, any boundary between the two.
If you are going to post something in social media that you wouldn't want your clients or your employer to be aware of, then you're an idiot. I mean, I think it's just totally stupid.
One thing I do hate, though, about blogs and people that speak to trade press and so on, is that I hate
There's nothing to hate about people who speak to trade press.
No, I just hate people that make comments on blogs or to trade press and use the word anonymous. To me, if you've got something to say, put your name against it. If you can't put your name against it, then don't say it.
Do you think consumers are aware of their impact on businesses? So if you're looking at Facebook, tweets, Foursquare, do you think they know how much we're listening?
Again, I'll draw on my CBA experience more than Telstra because I've not been there long enough. But, we had a blogger outreach program that was very much responding to customers that were blogging about CBA, and we were able to handle a lot of customer service issues in that way. So I hope that they know that we're listening and that it's a good thing.
Well, I think they think we're listening, but I don't think they en masse understand the power they could have. Hasn't been harnessed yet.
I've heard of experiences where airlines listen to customer comments about a flight being delayed and then actually do something in real time for that person that just made that negative comment. And people are astounded. And I think that I suppose indicates that whilst there might be a sort of passive awareness of a conversation being listened to, they don't necessarily expect that anyone will do anything with that information.
I don't think that we've had an example in Australia to the extreme that in the US, like Del Hell or United Airlines with the guitar episode that ended up going all around the world. But
For people who don't know, that was the United Breaks Guitars video.
So before I left Chicago, I alerted 3 employees who showed complete indifference towards me.
So those two things were phenomenal. And in Dell's case, they've taken that and turned it into a major success from a sales perspective by really embracing social media and using that as a sales channel.
There's a question that suggests that people are leaving the marketing industry because it's an industry they're not proud to work in. The question is, do you think that marketing itself has an image problem?
Whether or not in this country specifically, advertising or advertising agencies are seen in the same relatively high regard, I think, as perhaps they might be in the UK. I'm not sure. I mean, it all comes down to the culture of how advertising is consumed. But definitely we could be working harder to attract the best and the brightest when they're leaving university.
The fact is, I don't think our business trains as well as it should. Because the Y generation in particular want training, they want development, they want career paths. And we, as a business, are not doing it as well as we should. In the States, baristas get more training than advertising people do in the States.
I feel like we have a generation of people that are really excited about coming into our, the digital space. But I agree with Steady. It's we have to commit to training them, because I think, when I look at when I first started in media, there were, a couple of television stations and you had to buy Cocoa Pops from 4 to 5.
There were 3, Joe, not 2.
3, yeah, for $32, and you tried to get it for 31. So it's just a lot more complex than it was starting out, and I think we have to do a better job of training.
How do you get a client to buy a brave idea?
Give them one.
Now, there's a thought.
Is it something that will be good for their business? Is it going to save them money? Is it more efficient? Is it going to make them money? Is it going to grow sales? So tailor your pitch around what is the benefit to them. And sometimes it's quant, but too often we just walk in and I've got to sell you something.
If we get the foundation, essentially the strategic thinking right, then I think it gives us a lot more creative freedom around how we might express that message. So if you've got a client that already understands the strategic underpinning of whatever the campaign is going to be, and we're all agreed on that and we all understand that, and you can show how the creative idea, brave as it may be, absolutely embodies that strategic point of view, then a client should be quite willing to buy it, because a more creative expression of that is far more likely to elicit a response or create talkability beyond the media dollars that are put behind it than a boring version of it. So we shouldn't need to sell anything. We should simply be able to go through a process that creates absolute clarity around what it is we're trying to achieve, and then shows the logical link between the creative expression of that.